Hi, my name is Hazel Marron, and I will be covering Textbook 1, Chapter 9 Outline, Child Socialization and Personality. To start off, the introduction talks about the concept of the life cycle, and how it first emerged in the 20th century. The rapid increase in industrial productivity and medical technology increased the human lifespan. The average life expectancy in the U.S. increased from 47.3 years of age to 74.9 in 1988. So the concept of childhood was very vague back in the day, and it did not emerge in Europe until the 17th and 18th centuries. During medieval societies, schools only existed for the privileged. Most children had to work as early as the age of 7 years old. The word child was used to signify more like blood relationships rather than, status of age. Charlotte Bueller was the earliest pioneer to explore personality development from infancy to old age. She divided human lifespan into 5 periods. It was childhood, youth, adulthood 2, and aging. Age is not a predictor of behavior unless we look at, the social cultural context. For example, a 14-year-old girl can be going to school in the US, but in a rural village, maybe in Africa or somewhere else, she can already be a mother. The second part of chapter 9 talks about parental behavior and child personality. Parents are referred to at the traditional concept of parents, legal cosign, and primary caregivers who function as surrogate parents. Ronald P. Rohner, director of Center for the Study of Parental Acceptance and Rejection at the University of Connecticut, states that parental warmth and parental control are two major dimensions of parenting in all human societies. I'm not sure if I'm going to be pronouncing this correctly, but Schaeffer formulated the earliest conceptual framework for the study of parental behavior and child personality. Through factor analysis, he constructed a hypothetical model for maternal behavior. For example, love versus hostility and control. So love versus hostility and control versus autonomy. Becker modified Schaeffer's model by adding a third dimension, which was called like a calm detachment versus anxious emotional involvement. He replaced the word love with warmth and replaced permissiveness with autonomy and replaced control with restrictiveness. Warm and permissive parents facilitate living environments for children which result in active, creative, independent, and sociable children. Warm but restricted parents raise submissive, dependent, obedient, and less creative children. Parental hostility with permissiveness produce delinquent, aggressive, non-compliant children. Parental hostility with restrictiveness produce children with serious neurotic problems, social withdrawal, self-aggression, and antisocial behaviors. Some of the intervening variables are gender and birth order, inconsistency in parental behavior, cultural differences in gender roles and parenting. Bronfenbrenner's study of 1961, he stated that too much parental discipline impeded development of responsibility, that you needed a moderate level of authority instead. It says that the optimal level of authority was higher for boys than for girls. Becker, 1964, states that inconsistent parent behavior reduces the predictability of the child's environment. Hence, the child is confused and behavior becomes unstable. So an example is like a father who is very authoritarian and a mother who is very democratic in her behavior, in her raising of her child. Ronner and Ronner, 1981, examined 4 major classes of parent behavior variables. That says level of warmth and affection, the degree of hostile / aggressiveness, extent of indifference / neglectful, extent of permissiveness or autonomy. And the findings were that parental warmth is negatively correlated with parental neglect and parental hostility. Parental hostility is positively correlated with parental neglect. Parental hostility is positively correlated with parental control. Healthy psychological development of children is promoted most effectively by love with least moderate parental control. For the third part of chapter 9. It talks about parental absence and child personality. It looks at the father absence and child personality, and also mother absence and child personality. Early studies indicated that father-absent children can have problems such as sex roles, socialization, psychiatric disorder, impairment of intellectual growth, delinquency, and homosexuality. The variables looked at were the duration of absence, the reason for absence, age, sex, temperament of a child, parental surrogates, previous circumstances in family, previous parent-child relationships, and then simple causal relationships is impossible because of the many variables. So for the father absence and child personality, the effects of father absence in males, masculine identification problems. So the effects of absence for males of the father absence was they had problems with masculine identification problems in young boys, greater psychopathy the longer the absence, problems with moral development, decrease in mathematical skills in boys, has a greater effect on boys' academic performance than girls. Effects of father absence in females is alcoholism, suicide attempts, depression, greater aggression than father present girls, early exposure to sexual experiences. Stevenson and Black conducted a review on past literature and found that the reasons/circumstances of father absence appear to be more important than the actual absence per se. So for mother absence and child personality, John Bowlby, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, suggested that prolonged separation from mother and child can have various effects on the child's mental health and personality development. Margaret Mead disagreed with Bowlby's argument and argued that mother deprivation theory was an attempt by men to confine women to the home with their children. Annisworth states that maternal deprivation occurs under 3 different conditions: is insufficiency, discontinuity, and distortion. Michael Rudder is highly critical of past studies on the effect of maternal deprivation. Most controversial arguments include emphasis on deleterious effects of separation were incorrect. Evidence did not support the notion that the child's main bond with the mother differed in kind and in quality from other bonds. Recent development in maternal deprivation research has been the emphasis on individual differences in children's response to deprivation. All investigations had shown that many children are not damaged by deprivation. The term maternal deprivation is too heterogeneous and its effects are too varied for it to continue to have much use. For part 4, effects of television on child personality. Television has become a socializing agent for many American children. Some researchers explored the positive impact that television has, such as pro-social behavior, imaginative activity, moral messages, and learning languages. So kind of watching this from like shows like Sesame Street or like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, those kinds of things. And some researchers focus also on the negative impacts of television, such as aggressive behavior, facilitation of gender and race stereotyping, reduction of interaction, inhibition of reading skills, etc. The more extensively studied is the effect of television violence on later aggressive behavior. Bandura's modeling theory talks about learning through imitation. Therefore, a child learns to behave aggressively by watching people on television behave violently and get rewarded for these violent acts. The desensitization theory talks about how children develop a tolerance for violence and are desensitized in that way. The phenomena of misanthropy, which is a distrust of others, also has been found among those who watch heavy television violence. For part 5 of chapter 9, it talks about birth order and intelligence, a controversial topic in the area of child socialization and personality. Popular assumptions were that the firstborn child was more intelligent, that they have a higher sense of responsibility, they're more conservative, cooperative, and capable of leading, and then that the later born are more extroverted, sociable, empathetic, and risk-taking. However, empirical findings on these issues were inconsistent and not conclusive. Zajonc 1983, was persistent in validating his birth order theory and proposed the confluence model, which relates to the child's intelligence with his/her intellectual environment. Intelligence declines with family size and birth order. That's at least what he believed. Belmont and Merola also researched the effects of birth order and ship size on intelligence and found that men's intelligence was significantly related to birth order and family size. Steelman and Mercy, 1980, found that socioeconomic background and family structure are more powerful predictors of the child's intellectual development than the birth order effect and ship size. For the last part of Chapter 9, Minority Children, Socialization and Personality. In a sociological sense, a minority group is known as the subordinate group and has less power than the dominant group. Black families below the poverty line are consistently 3 times higher than white families. Hispanic families are consistently 2.7 times higher than white families. And Asian Americans are considered to be among the best of the minority groups. They're often called the model minority. Minority children are caught between 2 different cultures, races, and may experience a sense of marginality. Robert Park's concept of the marginal man talks about the man of mixed bloods who lives in 2 worlds and is more or less a stranger in both worlds. Kirchhoff and McCormick borrowed from Park's concept of the marginal man to test their theoretical construct of marginal personality characteristics. The findings were that identification with the white group was greatest among minority children with white appearances. Marginal personality traits were more evident in minority children who identified as part of the white dominant group. However, they were not accepted because of their minority characteristics. In other words, you can see like their appearance was not white looking. You know, it was more like Indian looking or Mexican looking, or you know, like whatever their race was. Hearst's findings show that social marginality derives from multiple stigma labeling factors. So Rutherman and Finey, authors of a book on children's ethnic socialization, the development process by which children come to see themselves as others, and others as members of a particular ethnic groups, have 4 unifying themes. Ethnic group differences. I'm so sorry, my dog. Okay. All right. Where was I? Okay, so Rutherman and Finey, authors of the book, Socialization. So ethnic group, so they have 4 unifying themes. Ethnic group differences in appearance, attitudes, values, and behaviors have an impact on development. Impact of ethnicity varies with age. Ethnic socialization has different implications depending on group to which young children belong to. Role of ethnic development is affected by environment and social, cultural, historical context. Children's growing awareness of ethnic differences and biculturalism creates stress on them due to conflicting values. I'm so sorry. This is the next part. That wasn't the last part. This is the last part. Bilingualism and personality. Okay, so biculturalism may create conflict for minority children, but it can also provide a double opportunity. So past studies tend to stress the potential negative effects of bilingualism on the cognitive and emotional development of a child. So recent studies have indicated more positive effects of bilingualism. So Pinter and Keller were also 2 researchers that reported detrimental effects like linguistic handicap, mental confusion, and emotional disorders. Reviewers of past studies found methodological shortcomings. Lambert and Tucker's 7-year-old longitudinal study of bilingualism found that there were no signs of or negative effects on cognitive development, and in subjects like math and science, level performance of bilingual children was similar, if not higher, than children who were not. Hammers and Blank found that the relationship between bilingualism and personality is dependent on social cultural context. If bilingualism is positively valued in a given community, then it can provide a double cultural opportunity, therefore enhancing personality and growth. Okay, so that would be all for my part. Thank you so much for watching.